Yehezkel, Ezekiel 4. We saw in 3, ending in verse 24, and the Spirit entered me, Ezekiel, and set me on my feet, and spoke with me, and said to me, Go and shut yourself inside your house, and you, O son of man, see, they shall put cords on you and bind you with them, so that you do not go out of their midst. And I make your tongue stick to the roof of your mouth, so that you shall be dumb, and not be a reprover to them, for they are a rebellious house. But when I, Yahweh, speak with you, I open your mouth, and you shall say to them, Thus said the Master Yahweh, He who hears, let him hear, and he who refuses, let him refuse, for they are a rebellious house. And so, in Ezekiel 1, 2, and 3, Ezekiel's having this incredible personal revelation of Yahweh and the power and authority of Yah, so that Ezekiel believes in Yah, because Ezekiel has to go prophesy to the house of Judah and the house of Israel. Ezekiel becomes a captive during the Babylonian exile of the Yehudim. So Ezekiel here is dumb. He can't speak. He's not going to say a word in 4 and 5. But for the man's first prophecies, he comes out swinging. There is a lot in 4 and 5. So we'll just get into it. Ezekiel chapter 4. And you, son of man, didn't Yeshua use that same connotation? The son of Adam, the son of man? Yes, he did. So A, that's a marker of a prophet. B, it harkens back to the pure bloodlines all the way back to Genesis chapter 6. Son of man, not son of corrupted flesh. Clean bloodlines, anointed of Yahweh, son of man. And you, son of man, take a clay tablet, and you shall lay it before you, and inscribe on it a city, Jerusalem, and shall lay siege against it, and build a siege wall against it, and heap up a mound against it, and set camps against it, and place battering rams against it all around. Then take an iron plate, and set it as an iron wall between you and the city, and you shall set your face against it, and shall be besieged, and you shall lay siege against it. It is a sign to the house of Israel. And lie on your left side, and you shall put on the crookedness of the house of Israel on it. As many days as you lie on it, you shall bear their crookedness. For I myself, Yahweh, have laid on you the years of their crookedness, according to the number of the days, 390 days, and you shall bear the crookedness of the house of Israel. And when you have completed them, you shall lie again on your right side, and shall bear the crookedness of the house of Judah, Yehuda, 40 days, a day for a year. I have laid on you a day for a year. Then you shall set your face towards the siege of Jerusalem, with your arm bared, and you shall prophesy against it. And see, I shall put cords on you, so that you do not turn from one side to another until you have completed the days of your siege. And take wheat and barley and beans and lentils and millet and spelt, and you shall put them into one vessel and make bread of them. You shall eat it as many days as you lie on your side, 390 days. And your food which you eat is eaten by weight, 20 shekels a day, to be eaten from time to time. And drink water by measure, 1/6 of a hin, to be drunk from time to time. And eat of it as a barley cake, and bake it before their eyes on human dung. And Yahweh said, Even so the children of Israel shall eat their defiled bread, among the nations to whom I drive them. Then I said, Master Yahweh, see, I have never defiled myself from my youth. Sounds a lot like Peter in Acts, doesn't it? See, I have never defiled myself from my youth till now. I have never eaten what died of itself or was torn by beasts, nor has unclean meat ever come into my mouth. Torah. And Yahweh said to me, See, I am giving you the dung of cattle instead of human dung, and you shall shall prepare your bread over it. And he, Yahweh, said to me, Son of man, see, I am going to cut off the supply of bread in Jerusalem, and they shall eat bread by weight and with fear, and drink water by measure and with dread, so that they lack bread and water, and shall be appalled with one another, and be consumed in their crookedness. Now, we read all of that through before any commentary, because the vast majority of that is Yahweh speaking, and I'm trying to get into a better habit of not interrupting the creator of the universe when he's speaking. So now let's go back over this again. And you, son of man, take a clay tablet, and you shall lay it before you, and shall inscribe on it a city, Jerusalem. He's literally making an effigy of Jerusalem here, a representation, iconography, if you will, of the city of Jerusalem, and shall lay siege against it, because Jerusalem is about to be under siege, and build a siege wall against it, and heap up a mound against itself, and set. Have you ever seen a sand table where battles are laid out with objectives and different elements moving across the sand table? It's kind of what's going on here. And build a siege wall against it, and heap up a mound against it, and set camps against it, and place battering rams against it all around. Now remember, he can't speak, but anybody who had come to this man of Elohim would see this iconography, this physical representation and prophecy of what's about to happen to Jerusalem. It is a sign to the house of Israel. And lie on your left side, and you shall put the crookedness of the house of Israel on it, on your left side. As many days as you lie on it, you shall bear their crookedness. For I myself, Yahweh, have laid on you the years of their crookedness, according to the number of the days, 319 days, and you shall bear the crookedness of the house of Israel. Okay, the left side, the prophet, the man of Elohim, representing God here, if you will, is laying on his side with an iron tablet, iron strength, impermeable in this day and age, separation between the man of Elohim and Jerusalem. So you've got Ezekiel laying here, then you've got this iron tablet, then you've got this siege work all around this clay tablet that has Jerusalem represented on it. Pretty obvious picture. The iron representing that separation between the Father and Jerusalem. And Jerusalem is under siege by its enemies. Now some will say that he lays on his side for 390 days because that's how long the siege of Jerusalem was. Now, the Chaldeans, that's the modern terminology for them, who are laying siege here, Nebuchadnezzar, the Kasdim, they are on site for about 19 months. But the siege was actually about 13 months. Well, the 6 months there or so in difference is when the Mitzrites, the Egyptians, come to attack the Babylonians in the rear while they are besieging Jerusalem. So that's one interpretation of this. But that's not what this says. Verse 5, For I myself, Yahweh, have laid on you the years of their crookedness, according to the number of the days, 390 days. So 390 years of crookedness, and you shall bear the crookedness of the house of Israel. So if we look at that, it was 390 years from the time that the unrighteous king Jeroboam came to power in Israel, Shomeron, to the siege of Jerusalem. And all that 390 years, by and large, the house of Israel was led by unrighteous men, and they had fallen by the wayside. They were not following Yah. They were bowing down to false items, worshiping Asherim, pillars, sun pillars. We call them steeples today. Burning incense to false gods, worshiping idols, graven images. None of which the Father is a fan of. he puts the smack down on people, especially his people, when they do that. So the 390 days that Ezekiel lays on his left side is for the 390 years of transgression of the house of Israel. And then verse 6, when you have completed them, the 390 days on your left side, you shall lie again on your right side, and shall bear the crookedness of the house of Judah. A day for a year. I have laid on you a day for a year. It was 40 years from the time that Jeremiah started prophesying to the time of Ezekiel, Yehezkel. So for 40 years, Israel had in their midst a man of Elohim crying, Teshuvah, repent, turn from your wicked ways, turn back to Yahweh. And they didn't. And because they didn't, they went into this Babylonian, Kasdim, Chaldean exile. They didn't listen. And so laying on his right side for 40 days, that represents the 40 years from Jeremiah to Ezekiel, where a man of Elohim beseeched the house of Judah to turn from their wicked ways, and they didn't. Verse 7, then you shall set your face towards the siege of Jerusalem with your arm bared, and you shall prophesy against it. Your arm bared. Yod, arm, acts, works, do stuff. So after this period of time, this 390 years, and these are parallel timelines between the house of Israel and the house of Judah. After these 390 years of sin with the house of Israel and 40 years of sin with the house of Judah, this arm is laid bare. This bare arm, the Yod, represents strength and works. And set your face towards besieged Jerusalem. Well, here comes the heat. Then you shall set your face towards the siege of Jerusalem with your arm bared, and you shall prophesy against it. And see, I shall put cords on you, so that you do not turn from one side to another until you have completed the days of your siege. Put cords on you. I don't know if he was physically tied up, if he was literally tied up, but it was like he could not move from this position. He was bound to this location. He was besieged to this location. Again, for anybody who would walk up on Ezekiel and see this, hopefully the imagery would be obvious. Because Jerusalem is about to be besieged, bound. And then verse 9, and take wheat and barley and beans and lentil and millet and spelt, Ezekiel bread. And you shall put them into one vessel and make bread with them. And you shall eat it as many days as you lie on your side, 390 days. Now some people make this bread to this day, and it has the caloric density to keep one alive. Imagine that. And some people tout the healing properties of it. I think in context here, this isn't something I would be eager to make myself personally. This is a meager sustenance. It's just enough to get by on. This is coarse bread. This is not fine wheat flour bread or barley bread. This is like literally bottom of the barrel. What do we have left to eat so that we don't die? Bread. And that's representative of what's going to happen during the siege of Jerusalem. People will be succumbing to famine and plague. There's very little food. And then if you look at how much he's told to eat in verse 10, and your food which you eat is by weight, 20 shekels a day to be eaten from time to time. A shekel is a half of an ounce by weight. This is 10 ounces by weight. It's just slightly over a half a pound of food per day. That's it. A half a pound of food per day. It's like a hamburger bun per day. And drink water by measure, 1/6 of a hin, to be drunk from time to time. That's a half pint. That's 8 fluid ounces of water per day. There are 4 of those in this one bottle. that I have right here. So this is 4 days worth of water for, this has drink mixture in it, that's why it's that color. This is 4 days worth of water for Ezekiel at this time. Again, who's prophesying against Jerusalem. So somebody who's observing this, he's eating very little food, just enough to not die, and it's incredibly low quality food. And he's barely drinking water, just enough to not die. And Ezekiel is the man of Elohim. He's doing this out of obedience to Yah. These judgments aren't on him, but he's bearing it for the house of Israel and for the house of Judah. He is bearing their sin, another pattern of behavior for a man of Elohim. And then in verse 12, eat it as a barley cake and bake it before their eyes on human dung. Now, human dung is unclean. Unclean like the current state of Jerusalem at this point. Let me ask you a question. Isn't there a Torah for burying one's dung? How does Ezekiel have access to human dung? The fact that there's even dried out human poo to cook food on is indicative of the sorry state of Jerusalem. You're supposed to cover your poo with dirt after you have a bowel movement. So the fact that this could even be done, and one would ask, why would the Father be telling Ezekiel, the man of Elohim, to do something that is a defilement? He's prophesying against Jerusalem. And then we see that there is mercy here in 15. So reading again at 12, and eat it as a barley cake and bake it before their eyes on human dung, which should not be a commodity, should not be available. Nobody should even see it, because it's unclean. And Yahweh said, even so the children of Israel shall eat their defiled bread among the nations to whom I drive them. That's the importance, that's the imagery of this bread cooked on human dung. But then Ezekiel says in 14, then I said, Master Yahweh, hold up, Yah. See, I've never defiled myself from my youth till now. I have eaten. And interesting how Ezekiel is chosen as a man of Elohim. I've never defiled myself from my youth until now. I am walking in the way, righteousness, blamelessly walking in the commands of Yah. Luke 1 verse 6. I've never defiled myself from my youth until now. I've never eaten what died of itself or what was torn by beast, nor has unclean meat ever come into my mouth. Parallels the book of Acts and Peter's vision, Acts chapter 10, which people say, see, I can eat whatever I want. You should really read all of 10 and all of 11, because that's about people, not about food. If God doesn't change, Malachi 3 verse 6, I'm the Lord Yahweh Sabaoth, I change not. Okay? And Jesus is God, right? Who doesn't change. Food was defined all the way back in the third book of the Bible, chapter 11, Leviticus 11. That's food. Everything else is not food. And you can claim, it's not what goes into a man's mouth that defiles him, but what comes out. Oh, Matthew 15, roger that. You should read that entire chapter in context, because that's about ritual hand washing. But back to Peter in Acts. That's about people. Peter says it 3 times, that he should not call what Elohim has called clean defiled regarding people. And he has the vision 3 times, and behold, 3 Romans show up at his door looking for him. And he explains the vision in Acts chapter 11. So rather than taking this vision that Peter had out of context, it was Peter's vision, not yours, by the way, or your pastors, or your priests. Rather than taking somebody else's word for it, take Peter's, because he clarifies what the vision means in Acts chapter 11. It's about people. So in verse 14 here in Ezekiel 4, Ezekiel says, hey man, I've never been defiled. And in verse 15, Yahweh says to him, "See, I am giving you, not Jerusalem, you, the dung of cattle instead of human dung, and you shall prepare your bread over it." Roger that, Ezekiel. I'll keep you clean, set apart, undefiled. You can cook your bread on the dung of cattle. But Jerusalem, they're in a bad way. And he, Yahweh, said to me, "Son of man, see, I'm going to cut off the supply of bread in Jerusalem, and they shall eat bread by weight, 10 ounces a day, and with fear, and drink water by measure, and with dread, 8 ounces per day, so that they lack bread and water, and shall be appalled with one another, and be consumed in their crookedness," die in their sin. And then chapter 5 is a doozy as well. I'll do the same thing. I will read all of 5 and then come back. But understand that these are judgments. And the Father clarifies what's going on here. "And you, son of man, take a sharp sword, take it as a barber's razor, and you shall pass it over your head and your beard, and you shall take scales to weigh and divide the hair. Burn with fire 1/3 in the midst of the city when the days of the siege are completed, and you shall take 1/3 and strike around it with the sword, and scatter 1/3 to the wind. And I shall draw out a sword after them, and you shall take a few hairs from there, and bind them in the edge of your garment. Take again some of them, and throw them into the midst of the fire, and burn them in the fire. From it a fire shall spread unto all the house of Israel. Thus said the Master Yahweh, this is Jerusalem, which I have set in their midst of the nations, with the other lands all around her. But she rebelled against my right rulings, doing wrong, more than the nations, and my laws more than the lands all around her. For they have rejected my right rulings, and they have not walked in my laws. Therefore, thus said the Master Yahweh, because you have rebelled more than the nations all around you, and have not walked in my laws, nor done my right rulings, nor even done according to the right rulings of the nations all around you, therefore thus said the Master Yahweh, look, I myself am against you, and shall execute judgments in your midst before the eyes of the nations. And I shall do among you what I have never done, and the like of which I shall never do again, because of all of your abominations. Therefore, fathers are going to eat their sons in your midst, and sons eat their fathers. And I shall execute judgments among you, and scatter all your remnant to all the winds. Therefore, as I live, declares the Master Yahweh, because you have defiled my set-apart place with all your disgusting matters, and with all your abominations, therefore I also withdraw, and my eye shall not pardon, nor shall I spare. 1/3 of you shall die of pestilence, and be consumed with scarcity of food in your midst, and 1/3 shall fall by the sword all around you, and I shall scatter another 1/3 to all the winds, and draw out a sword after them. And my displeasure shall be completed, and I shall bring my wrath to rest upon them, and I shall be eased. And they shall know that I, Yahweh, have spoken in my ardor, when I have completed my wrath upon them. And I shall make you a waste and a reproach among the nations that are all around you, before the eyes of all who pass by. And it shall be a reproach, an object of scorn, a warning and an astonishment to the nations that are all around you, when I execute judgments among you in displeasure and in wrath and in heated chastisements. I, Yahweh, have spoken. When I send against them the evil arrows of scarcity of food, which shall be for their destruction, which I send to destroy you, I shall increase the scarcity of food upon you, and cut off your supply of bread. And I shall send against you scarcity of food and evil beasts, and they shall bereave you, and pestilence and blood shall pass through you, while I bring the sword against you. I, Yahweh, have spoken. So Israel does abominations, and the Father, the house of Israel, for 390 years, he gives them an opportunity to repent. And the house of Judah, for 40 years, he gives an opportunity to repent, and they didn't. And he's like, all right, you don't want to listen to me? I'm going to do to you such horrors that the nations will be astonished. Your lack of obedience will be a witness to the nations as to who I am. I'm going to smoke you so hard. So let's go back to the beginning of 5. And you, son of man, take a sharp sword and take it as a barber's razor. And you shall pass it over your head and your beard. And you shall take scales to weigh out and divide the hair. Uncoveredness, without a covering. Every time you see a man shaved bald, there's 2 times in the Torah you see a man shaved bald. One is to his shame. Like he's been captured and he's been humiliated as a captive. They shave him. They shave his beard. The other is at the completion of a Nazirite vow. The Nazirite vow is set apartness dedication to Yah, the Naso Torah portion. You should read that. And by the way, everybody's favorite Pharisee in the New Testament, the Apostle Paul, Shaul of Tarsus, that people love to just take Paul's teachings out of context and say, see, Paul said you don't have to do Torah. Then why did Paul take a Nazirite vow in the book of Acts? After the death, burial, and resurrection of Yeshua, if that was all done away with, and he said you don't have to do the Torah. Riddle me that one, Batman. So, Ezekiel here is shaving his head and his beard. This is representative of uncoveredness because of the judgments that are about to come on Jerusalem. What are those? Burn 1/3 of the hair with fire in the midst of the city when the days of the siege are completed. That's famine and plague. You shall take 1/3 and strike around it with the sword. That's warfare, dying by the sword. And scatter 1/3 into the wind. That's being exiled. And I shall draw out a sword after them. That's a continuance of this conflict and being pursued. The unrighteous flee, though no one pursues them. Book of Proverbs. And you shall take a few hairs from your head, and bind them in the edge of your garment. What's on the corners of our garments? Zitziot, tassels, Numbers 15, verse 37, to remember and do all the commands of Yahweh your Elohim. So there's a few hairs, a remnant that is preserved, that is bound, that is woven into the edge of Ezekiel's garment. Those few righteous amongst the unrighteous in the midst of Jerusalem, those few will be preserved. And take again some of them, the hairs, and throw them into the midst of the fire, and burn them in the fire. From it a fire shall spread unto all the house of Israel. These are those that are fleeing unto the nations from Jerusalem to avoid the wrath that Yah is bringing. Yet they don't teshuvah, they don't turn, they're still thrown into the fire, they're still consumed by their sin. And in verse 5, clarification. Thus said the Master Yahweh, this is Jerusalem. What you're doing with your hair, this is Jerusalem, which I have set in the midst of the nations, with the other lands all around her. She's at the center of the nations. Everybody can see her. But she rebelled against my right rulings, doing wrong more than the nations. My people are more lawless than these heathens that are around them. And my laws more than the lands all around her. For they have rejected my right rulings, Torah, and not walked in my laws, Torah. They rejected the Torah, and they got smoked. Well, I'm a Gentile believer in Christ. I don't have to do the law. It was nailed to the cross. Colossians 2:14, your understanding of it is wrong. Go read it. What was nailed to the cross, the word is staros in the Greek, by the way, which means stake, not cross. That's a deep, deep rabbit hole. Do more research on Tammuz, Tammuz. But I digress. What was nailed to the stake was the doctrines and dogmas of men. Go read all of Colossians 2 in context. Don't cherry pick verses to make your pet doctrines out of. Because if Jesus is God and God doesn't change, how did the Torah go away? See, you Gentile believer, go read Romans 11, verse 16. You're grafted into the tree of life. The tree of life is and always has been a euphemism for Israel. There is one Torah for the Israelite and the sojourner within their gates. 1 John 3 verse 4, New Testament witness. Sin is lawlessness, Torahlessness, and all who do sin do lawlessness. Luke 1 verse 6, righteousness is blamelessly walking in the commands of Yah. So yeah, you do have to do these things. I do have to do these things. And if we don't, we get smoked. Verse 7. Therefore thus said the Master Yahweh, because you have rebelled more than the nations all around you, and have not walked in my laws, nor done my right rulings, nor even done according to the right ruling of the nations all around you, therefore thus said the Master Yahweh, look, I myself am against you, and shall execute judgments in your midst before the eyes of the nations. And I shall do among you what I have never done, and the like of which I will never do again, because of all your abominations. The Torah is about the preservation of life. Abominations, you'll hear people preach in Christendom, sin is sin, brother, it's all sin. Abominations, sin is transgression of the law. Abominations provoke the Father against you. By the way, read Leviticus 11. Swine, pork, that's an abomination. Homosexuality, somebody should tell the modern church, all these sopping wet P-word pastors, that's an abomination. The Torah is about the preservation of life. If you follow the Father's instructions, the way, and you receive knowledge of the truth, then you will have life. What did Yeshua say? I am the way and the truth and the life. No man comes to the Father but through me. In the beginning was the Word. In the beginning was the Word. What's the Word in the beginning? Flip your Bible to the beginning. The Word is the Torah. And the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Yeshua. And the Word became flesh. The Torah became flesh and dwelt amongst men. Why? 1 Peter 2:21, New Testament. For this you were called, that Messiah having suffered for your sins, your lawlessness, 1 John 3 verse 4, that you might walk in his steps. You have a man of Elohim whose pattern to follow, and he paid for your sin, right? Your lawlessness. And the cornerstone of his ministry is to remove sin from you. Would be good to know what sin is. Luckily, they put it in the Bible. Sin is lawlessness. Shall we sin? Shall we be lawless all the more, so that grace may abound? No, Yah forbid. There's a tie-in here with the horses in Revelation 6 and these judgments. Look, I myself am against you, and shall execute judgments in your midst before the eyes of the nations. In Revelation 6. And I saw when the Lamb opened one of the seals, and I heard one of the four living creatures say like a sound of thunder, come and see. And I looked, and I saw a white horse who sat on it holding a bow, and a crown was given to him, and he went out overcoming and to overcome. And when he opened the second seal, I heard the second living creature saying, come and see. And another horse, fiery red, went out, and it was given to the one who sat on it to take peace from the earth, and that they should slay one another. And a great sword was given to him. Sounds like 1/3 of the hair, huh? And when he opened the third seal, I heard the living creature saying, come and see. And I looked and saw a black horse, and he who sat on it was holding a pair of scales in his hand, judging. And I heard a voice in the midst of the four living creatures say, a measure of wheat for a denarius, and 3 measures of barley for a denarius, and do not harm the oil and the wine. Scarcity of food. Interesting. And when he opened the fourth seal, I heard the voice of the fourth living creature saying, come and see. And I looked, and I saw a green horse, and he who sat on it had the name Death. And Sheol, the place of the dead, followed with him, and authority was given to him over a fourth of the earth to kill with the sword, and with hunger, and with death. Sounds very similar to what's happening here in Ezekiel. And by the beasts of the earth. When he opened the fifth seal, I saw under the slaughter place at the temple. In the New Testament, there's a slaughter place at the temple. I thought that was all done away with. Nope, turns out it's not. And when he, Yahweh, opened the fifth seal, I saw under the slaughter place the beings of those having been slain for the capital W, word of Elohim, and for the witness which they held. The word of Elohim, and for the witness which they held. Here is the endurance of the saints, those having a testimony of Yeshua HaMashiach, witness, and keeping the commands, the word. And they cried with a loud voice, saying, How long, O Master, set apart and true, until you judge and avenge our blood on those who dwell on the earth, the remnant, those who are tied into the edge of the garment, the zitziot of Ezekiel. And there was given to each one a white robe, purity. And they were told that they should rest a little while longer. Also, white robes. Who wore white robes in the Old Testament? Anybody? Because there's a slaughter place here, which means there's a temple here. Who wore white robes? Oh, right, the Levites, in service to the temple. So here are those who had been slain for the word of Elohim and for the witness which they held, their testimony of Yeshua HaMashiach and keeping the commands. Levites, neo-Levites, if you will, in service to the temple in end times. A clear juxtaposition to all these other people who are getting smoked for their unrighteousness. And there was given to each one a white robe, and they were told that they should rest a little while longer until both the number of their fellow servants and their brothers, who would be killed as they were, was completed. And I looked when he opened the sixth seal, and I saw a great earthquake come to be, and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became as blood. Later in Ezekiel, approximately Ezekiel 33-ish, we'll see some of this as well. And the stars of the heavens fell to the earth as a fig tree drops its unripe figs, being shaken by a strong wind. Fig tree. Constant Old Testament references to a fig tree. You shall know them by their fruit. Why does Yeshua curse the fig tree for not bearing any fruit? Curses it, and you say you will wither away. You will never bear any fruit again. You will be thrown into the fire. It's a euphemism for you who acted as if you had belief, but bore no fruit. You were useless. And heaven departed like a scroll being rolled up, and every mountain and island was moved out of its place. And the kings of the earth, and the great ones, and the rich ones, and the commanders, and the mighty, and every slave, and every free one, hid themselves in the caves and in the rocks of the mountains, and said to the mountains and the rocks, Fall on us and hide us from the face of him sitting on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb, because the great day of his wrath has come, and who is able to stand? Back to Ezekiel 5:10. Therefore fathers are going to eat their sons in your midst, and sons eat their fathers. This goes back to that dung, that uncleanness, that human dung that Ezekiel was going to eat his bread on, but the Father had mercy and gave him the dung of cattle instead. And I shall execute judgments among you and scatter all your remnant to all the winds. In 2 Kings 6:24-30, there's a story of two women. One woman comes to the king and says, Hey, they're under siege. She says, We have no food. And so my neighbor and I, we made an agreement. Yesterday we ate her son, and yesterday we ate my son, and today we were supposed to eat her son, but she has hidden her son from me. Please come with me and render judgment. And the king tears his garments and laments because of the sad state of affairs, how far they have fallen at this point. They have no food. They're eating children. No wonder Yah's pissed. What is the first command in the Torah? Be fruitful and multiply. Children are not food. And yet his people, because they've fallen so far from him, they've gotten so far away from him, they've lost his blessings so much, they're looking at children as a source of food. Verse 11, therefore as I live, declares the Master Yahweh, because you have defiled my set-apart place with all your disgusting matters, the temple, you've brought all of your bullcrap into his temple. Modern Christendom, anybody? And with all your abominations, modern Christendom, anybody? Therefore I also withdraw, and my eye shall not pardon, nor shall I spare. 1/3 of you shall die of pestilence and be consumed with scarcity of food in your midst, and 1/3 shall fall by the sword all around you. And I shall scatter another 1/3 to all the winds, and draw out the sword after them. And my displeasure shall be completed, and I shall bring my wrath to rest upon there, and I shall be eased. And they shall know that I am Yahweh, that I, Yahweh, have spoken it in my ardor, when I have completed my wrath upon them. And I shall make you a waste and a reproach among the nations that are all around you, before the eyes of all who pass by. And it shall be a reproach, an object of scorn, a warning and an astonishment to the nations that are all around you, when I execute judgments among you in displeasure, and in wrath and in heated chastisements. I, Yahweh, have spoken. Yeah, but my pastor said, my bishop said, my priest said, my grandpa said, my best friend said, I, Yahweh, have spoken. When I send against them the evil arrows of scarcity of food, which shall be for their destruction, which I send to destroy you, I shall increase the scarcity of food upon you and cut off your supply of bread. And I shall send against you scarcity of food and evil beasts, and they shall bereave you, and pestilence and blood shall pass through you, while I bring the sword against you. I, Yahweh, have spoken. I would submit that it is not wise to be getting into arguments with the creator of the universe. I think it's pretty clear who wins. What does Yeshua say? Come to me, all you who labor. My yoke is easy. My burden is light. This is not, the Torah is not hard. We have an entire book. An entire book about how much Yah loves us and how much he wants us to live. He became flesh for us simply to teach us this lesson again so we could come home again. In Deuteronomy 32, verse 45, Moshe's epic mic drop. And when Moshe ended speaking all these words to Israel, he said to them, set your heart on all the words which I warn you today, so that you command your children to guard to do all the words of this Torah. For it is not a worthless word for you, because it is your life, and by this word you prolong your days on the soil which you pass over the Jordan to possess. You should read all of Deuteronomy 32. It is insanely good. You neglected the rock who brought you forth, and forgot the Elohim who fathered you, and Yahweh saw and despised because of the provocation of his sons and his daughters. And he said, let me hide my face from them. Let me see what their end is, for they are a perverse generation, children in whom there is no trusting. They made me jealous by what is not Elohim. They provoked me with their worthless matters. But I make them jealous by those who are of no people. I provoke them with a foolish nation. For a fire was kindled in my wrath and burns to the bottom of Sheol. and consumes the earth and its increase, and sets on fire the foundations of the mountains. I gather evil upon them. I use my arrows upon them, wasted by scarcity of food, and consumed by heat and bitter destruction. And the teeth of beasts I send upon them, with the poison of serpents of the dust. The sword bereaves from the outside, and fear from within, both young man and maiden, nursing child with the man of gray hairs. I said, I should blow them away. I should make a remembrance of them, to cease from among men. If I did not fear the enemies taught, lest their adversaries misunderstand, lest they say, our hand is high, and Yahweh has not done all of this. For they are a nation lost to counsel, and in them there is no understanding. If they were wise, then they would understand this. They would consider their latter end. How would one chase 1,000 and two put 10,000 to flight, unless their rock had sold them and Yahweh had given them up? For their rock is not like our rock. Even our enemies are judges. Their vine is the vine of Sodom, and their fields of Gomorrah. Their grapes are grapes of gall. Their clusters are bitter. Their wine is the poison of serpents and fierce venom of cobras. It is not stored up with me, sealed among my treasures. Vengeance is mine and repayment at the time their foot slips. For near is the day of their calamity, and the matters prepared are hastening to them. For Yahweh rightly rules his people, and has compassion on his servants, when he sees that their power is gone, and there is no one remaining shut up or at large. And he shall say, where are their false gods, the rock in whom they sought refuge, who ate the fat of their slaughterings, and drank the wine of their drink offerings? Let them arise and help you. Let it be a hiding place for you. See now that I am he, and there is no Elohim besides me. I put to death, and I make alive. I have wounded, and I heal, and from my hand no one delivers. For I lift up my hand, swearing an oath to the heavens, and shall say, as I live forever, I have sharpened my flashing sword, and my hand takes hold on judgment. I shall return vengeance on my enemies, and repay those who hate me. I make my arrows drunk with blood. My sword devours flesh. My God would never do that. I make my arrows drunk with blood, and my sword devours flesh with the blood of the slain and the captives from the long-haired enemy chiefs. O nations, acclaim his people, for he avenges the blood of his servants, and returns vengeance to his adversaries, and shall pardon his land and his people. Deuteronomy 32 is fire. Ezekiel 4 and 5. Bless y'all. Shalom.